Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the She Is Unleashed podcast. This is the podcast where faith meets fierce leadership and women rise into their divine calling with strategy, with excellence, and grace. I'm your host, Dr. Mirriam Knight. I'm a leadership strategist, a clinical psychologist, and just a voice that is desiring that high performing faith driven women are lead with greater impact and integrity. In today's episode, we're going to radically shift the way you think about leading and the way you relate, not just to your team, but to yourself. And we're talking about emotional intelligence and leadership and how to lead with wisdom and discernment. Now, the world often tells us that leaders are the key to success in all spheres, right? But we talk a lot about knowledge, strategy, and skill. But from a kingdom perspective, we learn that there's more to leading successfully. And without wisdom, without the ability to read the room, to regulate our emotions, and discern the heart of God in our decisions, in our leadership, we can literally create environments that are brittle and disconnected. And so that's why today I'm so excited to have my friend and colleague, Dr. Tamala Black, who is with me today. She's a leader, she's an educator, and she's an advocate who has dedicated her whole life to helping leaders, educators, and organizations grow in emotional intelligence and trauma-informed leadership. I'm going to read a little bit more about her bio in 1 second, but her work blends deep professional expertise with spiritual discernment, and I know you're going to get so much goodness out of this episode today. So let me read a little bit more about her background. She is a dedicated professional psychologist and licensed marriage and family therapist, originally from Southern California. She earned her Master's of Arts in Clinical Psychology with an emphasis on marriage and family therapy from Pepperdine University, and subsequently obtained a doctoral degree in applied clinical psychology, which is where we met, from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. Currently, Dr. Black runs an independent private therapy practice and collaborates with community clinics across California, offering psychodynamic and psychoanalytic therapy, as well as assessment testing services. Her expertise has been showcased, yes, on the Oprah Winfrey Network television show called Family or Fiance during seasons 3 and 4, where she assisted families and couples navigating trauma. Additionally, she has contributed to the LA Times and featured in various podcasts. In her commitment to education, Dr. Black serves as a clinical supervisor at both the Wright Institute Los Angeles Counseling Center and Pelican Cove Counseling Center. And these are important because she's bringing today, y'all going to get a whole amazing mixture of different perspectives in today's session. In these roles, she instructs and supervises master's and doctoral level trainees in psychological assessment practices. She is particularly passionate about supporting clinicians of color in their professional journeys, advocating for increased access to supervision, mentorship, and clinical training. Throughout her clinical career, Dr. Tamala Black has provided specialized therapeutic services to individuals facing life challenges, particularly those related to trauma. She works with adults and couples ages 18 and up from diverse backgrounds, addressing a variety of issues including depression, anxiety, mood disorders, identity conflicts, race and culture, spirituality, life transitions, family dynamics, relationship concerns, anger, grief, and loss, providing a safe space to explore their thoughts and experiences. Additionally, she provides presentations and conferences on neurotheology. That's really awesome. Dr. Black is an active member of several professional organizations, including the PSI CHI National Honor Society, the American Psychological Association Division 39, the Association of Black Psychologists, and the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. I want to note this too. She is also a daughter of God, a daughter of the Most High, and very passionate about her walk with the Lord. In her personal life, Tamala enjoys volunteering with nonprofit organizations, engaging in ministry activities at her church, reading poetry and novels, watching documentaries, and spending quality time with her family. I know that's a lot. That's not even the tip of the iceberg. But welcome, Dr. Tamala, Dr. Black, to the She's Unleashed podcast. I am so honored to have you here. And so before we go into a deep dive of our conversation today, I want to just invite you to tell us a little bit about your journey. Tell our listeners about who you are. I know that was a huge bite, but that doesn't, again, talk about your heart. So tell us a little bit about who you are and just what has brought you to this part in your journey where you serve in this amazing way.
Sure. Well, first, I do want to honor the space and thank you so much for having me. And it's truly an honor to really create space to think about this important topic. And just a little bit about who I am. First, I'd like to acknowledge I'm human.
Thank you for saying that
Yeah.
part.
Yes. And I'm just a woman after God's heart first. And so I have always had a passion of helping, of listening, of just creating space to heal, creating space to uplift people and direct them to where they need to go. And so I'm on this journey of ever evolving. I love learning. I love giving back, but I also love accepting help and guidance as well, which I think is very important as we think about this
Absolutely.
topic of leadership. We can't lead unless we're actually willing to be led.
Absolutely.
So I actually just navigate wherever God wants me to go. I try not to question, but just put one step at a time, one foot above in front of the other, and just go from there. So that's a little bit about personally who I am.
Okay. Awesome. I am excited. And thank you for your yes and agreeing to have this conversation with me today. So let's talk about a little bit about emotional intelligence. And I'm going to go off script a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, so, emotional intelligence in leadership and why it's a personal passion for you, specifically in the populations that you work with and your experiences, even as a human being over the course of your life. Why is emotional intelligence something that's close to your heart?
Sure. So, one position that I take when thinking about emotional intelligence is that we're sensory human beings. And because of the type of work that I do is oriented to insight and awareness, I am really, really keen on understanding the emotion in the body that creates our perception and relationship to ourselves and the world, especially other human relationships. So, if we're not really understanding the emotions in our body, we're not really understanding how we're perceiving or misperceiving a situation or even a relationship. So it's super important to really, really get in tune and create more normacy around understanding what I'm feeling instead of trying to actually change it. Because we're in a society where there's a lot of positive toxicity, I would say, or repressing or trying to actually get rid of feelings too quickly without understanding the root and why it's there.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe in understanding is the path to really, really making intentional decisions and actually intentional actions towards the situation.
That's powerful. So, when we study this, we talk about the unconscious becoming conscious. And even with our emotions, like we a lot of times suppress, as leaders, especially high achieving women. So let's take it specifically to high achieving women, women that are in the forefront, women that are leading, and men. But because of the nature of this podcast being directed to women, in this population, why is it so important that we come into that place of understanding our emotions? Because a lot of times, as high performing women in places of leadership and influence, we don't even feel like we have permission to pause and
Mhm,
understand what we're feeling. We got
mhm,
to move it along because somebody's looking to us for something, needing something from us, there really isn't any space or room to sit and understand.
Mm-hmm.
So, in your experience with high achieving women, why is it so important for us?
Sure. So, in relation to high achieving women in particular, the reason why it's important is because what I have witnessed in treating others or guiding others, and even in myself over time, is that we actually forget that we have emotion and needs ourselves
Mm.
because we get a lot of fulfillment in actually actualizing and meeting the needs of others.
Mm.
So, because we're naturally nurturers, we may replace getting needs met within other people as meeting our own needs.
Ooh. Okay, we're gonna go there at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh. So you're saying that just because I'm making sure that everybody else is okay doesn't mean that I'm necessarily okay.
Yes, because the baseline meaning of meeting other needs and then self neglecting and not even understanding what's missing is that everyone else needs to be okay before I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something underneath that. So, really coming back to our emotional life gives us the energy, the perspective to actually value and to actually take care and maintain your identity as a leader in
Mm-hmm.
order to continue to pour out because we can't pour out of an empty cup.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of us don't really understand that our cup is empty because we're on automatic pilot of fulfilling someone else's needs. So we essentially forget to feel. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to feel, validate when we're exhausted, when we need
Mm-hmm.
a pour into our lives. And because we're in a position and it's reinforced over and over again, we get gratification, we
Mm-hmm.
get a lot of pleasure, we get a lot of joy
Mm-hmm.
out of what we do
Yeah.
when we're not in that position any longer. And this is why it's so important because we have to be careful of overpouring. And
Mm-hmm.
then when that space is not there any longer, we come to actually identify, wait a minute, what have I been doing all this time?
Mm.
Why is my cup empty? And so we have to actually come back to a place of understanding no matter how much gratification, reinforcement we get, we still have needs and they're valid as well.
It's so funny. Well, God has a sense of humor because I was actually having a conversation with someone this morning, and we were talking about how when our identity becomes so wrapped up in what we do, and in this case with what you're saying is wrapped up in serving others,
Mhm.
wrapped up in pouring into others. And I've heard many women and men too, but women say this, like, as long as everyone else is happy, I'm happy. That I
Mhm.
find joy in taking care of other people. I find joy. My cup is filled when I am taking care of other people and I see a smile on other people's faces. And what I heard you say was, we can misconstrue that and mistake doing that as our way of filling our cup until we get to the point where we realize that this whole time we weren't actually filling our cup, that we are actually empty. But because mentally we've come to believe that that's our way of filling our cup, we never even recognize that we've been missing out this whole entire time until we crash.
Yes, absolutely. Until the crash happens,
Mm-hmm.
or until those moments of silence happen,
Mm.
until there's not an issue to fix.
Oh, okay. So let's go there for a second. The codependency component.
Yes.
We don't even want to talk about that. Like where we derive our identity and our filling of our cup from fixing people's problems.
Mm-hmm.
You said when there's no longer a problem to fix, or we're displaced and somebody else is fixing the problem and people are not looking to us to fix the problem.
Yes, which also impacts the dissonance in regards to our identity. Who am I when I'm not the fixer?
Mm-mm.
And so there are different positions, a lot of insight, and a lot of inventory that we have to take.
Mm-hmm.
What is the purpose, the reasoning? What is the motivation, the focus? Is the season that I'm in?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes we can actually overly give so much of ourselves outside of season as well. There is a season to actually draw back and be refilled. There's a season to actually go out to the field and plow and to actually sow. But sometimes we get so stuck in that identity of giving to the point of depletion.
Mm-hmm.
And then our leadership is watered down, our insight is dimmed, our outpour is not as anointed or strong. So, and then it really, really impacts our ability to really hear. Sometimes God does gives us the assignment to rest.
Yeah.
And so if we're so tied to that identity of doing, and this is the difference between doing and being.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be able to be first
Mm-hmm.
because we're also modeling and mirroring what it's like to have self-care,
Mm-hmm.
to have self-respect, to really, really value your own life. Because we have to really understand while we have assignments, we also have one life,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to actually be stewards of the management of our time and what we give our attention to as well.
Absolutely.
Because many high performing women are not just high performing in their profession,
Mm-mm.
but at home,
Yeah.
in the supermarket. So we have to actually really, really understand when to reset, when to release that hat of
Mm-hmm.
leadership, and when to actually activate it.
Mm-mm-mm. So you're saying I'm not gonna, as a high achieving woman, I'm not gonna go to the grocery store in my flip flops and my bonnet and, just not really care about what anybody is thinking. But
Mhm,
as a high achieving woman, my brain never actually shuts down. I'm
mhm.
still high performing, even though, and so I have to be perfect even when I go to the grocery store.
Yes, yes. So I have to be available to everyone's need.
Mm-mm.
And this really ties to understanding how to nurture and manage your gift.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes we forget that our gifts also have to be protected.
Mm.
God didn't give us a gift to be overused or misused or misplaced. And just because you have the capacity doesn't mean you have to turn the light on every time.
You're going there today. So you probably don't even know this, but the last She's Unleashed gathering that I had this month, the title was The Oil Flows Here. And we literally were talking about guarding our oil
Mm-hmm.
and guarding and nurturing the gifts because of what it has cost us,
Mm-hmm.
seeing the value of that. And you're just right on that. I'm going to pull back just a second and go back to, so let's emotional intelligence, EQ, EI, all this wonderful stuff, social media, TikTok, whatnot. It's all over the place, and everybody seems to be an expert in this lately, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Sure.
so you are the one that has actually been trained, equipped, and has the clinical skills regarding this. So can you break it down for our listeners, like what actually is emotional intelligence from the right definition of it?
Mm-hmm.
And what does that actually look like? If you can explain that a little bit from the right perspective.
Sure, sure. So just to simplify it, where we're able to metabolize it, emotional intelligence is the capacity to understand, interpret, and also manage your own emotional life, but also be able to be attuned to the emotional life of the others that you're leading or tending to, and being able to actually apply that in a direction where it's effective and appropriate to the situation or circumstance. So it's really using our God given ability to actually feel,
Mm-hmm.
because we're not really totally comfortable as a society feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Using that barometer to actually encode and as a flashlight per se, to really understand how to really connect in an appropriate way and to have the cognitive and emotional flexibility to actually adjust.
So let's take that to the different spheres of a high achieving woman's life.
Mhm,
So let's start with us first. So in the personal life,
mhm.
what does that look like?
Yes. So in your personal life, I like to use the analogy, anybody that has been to an amusement park, it's really huge, and you go to this map, and there's a little X, you are here.
Mm,
Every now and then, we have to actually check the map. Where are you in your life,
mm-hmm.
your family, your responsibilities? Where are you in your physical health? Where are you in your spirituality? Where are you in regards to any life events that has happened? Where are you in your assignment? What
Mm-hmm.
is on your plate? What is your understanding of your goal as a leader? What is the expectation? These are all questions to actually understand the X, the red X on the map. Where are you?
Mm-hmm.
That is your personal responsibility as a leader to understand where we are first. That takes place outside of the profession and the career
Mm-hmm.
of leadership. Then you take that information and move forward. So that is the first step, is looking in the mirror and really understanding, what am I attached to, what needs to be moved, what
Mm-hmm.
needs to be prioritized, what is the space that I have left.
Mm-hmm. So that's on a personal level. So it starts here, right? Because leadership starts with us leading ourselves first,
Mhm.
checking in with ourselves. So let's shift that to the next level, which is our personal relationships, our family, our friends. Before we even go into the professional and the career spaces, what does emotional intelligence look like in our relationships, our close relationships, next circle around ourselves?
Sure. So relationships are very important, specifically when it comes to assignment
Mm-hmm.
and leadership. The personal evaluation, and this is why understanding who you're connected to, not just what, is very important.
Mm-hmm.
And this takes me to um, my reflection on relationship intelligence as well.
Mm.
Because there are some people who may not be as supportive in regards to the direction that you're going. So, taking a full evaluation, what are my family dynamics? What are my co working dynamics? What are my synagogue or church dynamics?
Mm-hmm.
Who are my mentors? Who are in my life too that I need to actually lead? These are all relationships that you actually evaluate. Then you take an analysis of, are these individuals in the right place and in the right season?
Mm.
Sometimes we have people in the wrong positions, and Having individuals in the wrong positions can actually impact your assignment and the relationship quality. Having someone as a friend that should be a business partner
Mm.
or an acquaintance can actually impact how you're moving and the direction and what is going to be manifest out of the relationship. Having family members that may not have your best interests in mind, but overly attached or overly pouring out of obligation, when God did not assign
Mm.
families to have control over our assignment,
Mm-hmm.
but merely to actually sow into and release into the hands of God,
Mm.
may give us the wisdom and insight how to really adjust and create distance and boundaries. Boundaries are very important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-mm-mm. Okay.
Mhm.
Our personal emotional intelligence, that of our relationships, I love that relational intelligence. All of these have such an impact because as women, because you said this, we're nurturers. So when our personal relationships with ourselves and our relationship with others that are in our close circle, when those are off kilter, it impacts how we're showing up. No matter how much we want to say we can disassociate, I always complain about this, that my husband has the ability to compartmentalize his life.
Mhm.
We can have this situation over here, and the next moment on this other situation, he's like completely disconnected. One thing is not related to the other thing.
Mhm.
And men have the ability to do that.
Yes.
Women do not. So everything is related. And
Mhm.
so how we're experiencing our own emotions related and relationships impact us to the core
Yes.
because we are these nurturers. Now, this all, if we don't cultivate emotional intelligence in these spheres, it's going to show up in our corporate settings, it's going to show up in our places of influence and impact. In
Mhm.
your experience with these high achieving individuals, because you've had the opportunity to even interact with some celebrities in different spheres too of
Mhm.
higher influence, right? How does not dealing with the personal stuff and the relational stuff in an emotionally intelligent way, how does that overflow into other spheres of influence and impact?
Sure. So we have to keep in mind that you are you wherever you go.
Mm.
And you have one vessel, and your mind, your body, your spirit is actually collecting experiences. Whatever experience goes through you, you carry with you through all environments, whether you're consciously aware or not.
Mm-hmm.
So, if there are unresolved areas of your life personally, it will come out consciously and unconsciously in different areas. We process emotion, and then the emotion comes out in our communication and our decision. If we have high conflict or high anxiety in our personal life, then that may influence our decision making because we don't have enough emotional space to actually make quality decisions that will actually make us very, very impatient in our
Mm-hmm.
decision making and with other people in traffic. We want to actually offload as many to dos as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when mistakes happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's when emotions begin becoming coded on our face and impacts our communication and how we're received, how we're perceived. It impacts our tone of voice.
Yeah.
It impacts what we say yes to and what we say no to. So, whatever you go through in life, personally or professionally, there's no real true separation between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Even though men have the capacity to compartmentalize, and they do, neurologically, their brain are wired a bit differently. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean they're not holding a space in the back of their mind that's still influencing the undercurrent of what they're experiencing.
Yes. That's so good. James chapter 3, verse 17 says, the wisdom that comes from heaven is first pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Emotional intelligence is not just a worldly concept. It is a God concept. It's a kingdom concept. So let's talk about wisdom and discernment. And how can we distinguish the difference? How do we act in wisdom and discernment? And how does emotional intelligence influence that?
Sure. So, in regards to wisdom and discernment, we want to actually separate it from knowledge. So, knowledge is the capacity to intellectualize, to analyze, to reason. When it comes to discernment, discernment is applying what we know, what we've been educated on, what we've experienced. And wisdom is actually knowing the when and the how. And I personally don't separate wisdom from the wisdom of the Lord.
Absolutely.
And so it's really understanding that the intellect and the discernment accompanied with the wisdom of God can actually create a new ingredient to what God has possessed you with. So wisdom is allowing yourself to put together, I have the knowledge, I have the how, and now I have the actually blended ingredient on how to move forward. And this is why the 4 W's and the H is important. Right?
Okay, take us there.
When, where, what, how, etc.
Yes.
Right? Usually the wisdom will give us the guidance. For instance, there are many testimonies that I heard in 2019 and 2020 where God spoke to many people to actually just begin to store up, to move in a certain direction. And many did not question it. And then all of a sudden we get an answer because the whole world shut down because of the pandemic. And I have a testimony of God actually telling me what to do and how to do, and I had no reason to actually understand what I was doing, but it certainly worked out. So it's really waiting on that still small voice to actually apply to what you know. We don't want to get cankerized in the education to the formula, to the statistics, to what has worked well in the past, because the future is open, but we need the wisdom of God to actually know what's going to happen the next step, and we just logically do not know.
Yeah. And a lot of times, like you're saying, it's not the wisdom of God, the discernment of God may not always make sense logically. And sometimes it contradicts the knowledge that we may have. Like the facts and the data don't say anything, but you're hearing the relationship that you have from God allows you to hear God leading you into spaces that may not logically make sense. You said earlier on that when we lack emotional intelligence, when we don't tune in and make the room and make space to feel and understand what we're feeling, that it distorts our ability, our perception is distorted. How we see situations, how we view circumstances, and thus make decisions based on our perception, our interpretation of the situations also becomes influenced and distorted. We're not able to execute the wisdom, the discernment that God gives us because we're not taking care of whatever's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
In your experience, worst case scenario, if we don't take care of cultivating emotional intelligence, because some people might be saying, I hear you, Dr. Black, but I really don't have the time.
Mhm. Mhm.
Or that's too mushy for me. That's, I know we keep talking, we hear it lately in social media, the soft life. We've been talking about that, but there's various women, and myself included, there's been moments in my life and my journey where I'm like, I can't afford to slow down and give in to the emotions or feel the emotions, because I'm afraid that if I do, I'm going to fall apart.
Mhm.
I've become so accustomed to just keeping it moving.
Mhm.
And the fear of slowing down and attuning to those emotions is scary, because what happens? I'm the one everybody else goes to. I'm the one that everyone comes to for, who do I go to? If I fall apart, nobody's going to be there to pick up the pieces
Mhm.
and put it back together. Like, what are you talk? I can't afford, I hear you, but I can't afford to do that. I don't have the time or the space or the support system to do that. So, worst case scenario, if us, the high achieving women,
Mhm.
don't take the time and make the time and intentionally carve out time to attune to our emotional intelligence, what's the worst case scenario?
Sure. So, in that, if I was to receive that concern and perception, one of two things that I hear in that reflection is I'm alone
Mm.
and I'm in fear.
Mm.
So that may be the two areas to actually address first. What is behind the fear? What is the fear? To identify what is the fear. And we're not going to minimize there are shifts in life where you feel that you have to actually address and actually prioritize emergency or urgent situations,
Mm-hmm.
such as if there's a financial constraint, if there's a relative that is ill,
Mm-hmm.
if you feel that your company is on the brink of collapse.
Mm-hmm.
We want to understand the fear, but if you don't create space to understand why do you feel you do not have the time,
Mm-hmm.
because this circumstance was co-created. And what I mean co-created, there is something that you deposited into where you are that got you where you are.
Mm.
So you want to understand what is the context of the fear. Is it real? Is it imagined? But also, if you're scared to get too close to where it is, then what do you imagine would happen if you were to look a little bit closer? And how did you get to this place of feeling you had to do this on your own?
Mm.
Why is there's a propensity to actually navigate your emotional life and what you're experiencing alone? That was not just generated.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were to just adjust what is the urgent, and this is what came up for me as I was thinking about even the term of high achieving women, it feels very anxiety provoking.
Yes, it does.
Yes, okay. There's an urgency when you
Mm-hmm.
high achieving, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's all there, and this is why every word has energy behind it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, high achieving, we're looking at anxiety. What is the anxiety? Is it fear? Is it excitement? Is it urgency? Is it agitation? Is it irritation? Is it lack of sleep? Right? So, we want to understand that not addressing the fear, not
Mm-hmm.
addressing the belief that you don't have time is actually contributing to an unhealthy cycle.
Mm.
And I'll quickly add to that. just because we develop defenses such as suppression or denial or displacement,
Mm-hmm.
it does not mean that that root is not there. One day we will have to adjust the stump, the root. So we can either choose to voluntarily address it or end up a place where I see so sadly in a place of burnout, in a place of identity confusion, in a place of depression, or even in a place of really just giving up and feeling disconnected to your calling.
Talk about emotional intelligence when we are leading teams and as leaders with staff, as leaders in situations where we have to work with a group of people. What
Mhm,
does it look like? And I want to go back to maybe asking you to break down the different components of emotional intelligence.
mhm.
um, what does it look like to build emotionally safe teams without lowering the bar for accountability and excellence?
Yeah, sure. So I would say it depends on the organization. And so let's start there. It definitely depends on the industry and organization. Some organization are more community based driven, more service based, more if you're creating products, that's going to actually influence the group dynamics that you're actually working with. So you want a really good understanding of the structure, of the mission, of the vision that you have for the overall company or group. But also the next layer to that, you want to understand who's on your team. Are the individuals assigned to the right positions and places? Then you want a good idea of understanding how do you want these two groups to work together. There are some organizations or groups where it's more independent focused, but everyone has a good concept of the collective goal. And then you have other companies where we have to actually work jointly together and get along and have emotional connection and a collaborative approach. So you want a good understanding of those components first. Then you want to understand how you're being perceived as a leader, as a CEO, as a manager, whatever your assignment is. You want a good understanding of the position and what is your position and what is your responsibility first, because you are the umbrella over your team or the organization. So, getting a really good insight helps you to actually mirror and model what the vision, what is the pattern of behavior, the consciousness of the group. So, if you're able to actually model a good understanding, a standard, a good walk, how you're perceived, how you speak, you would be able to actually influence just by them observing what is my position as an employee, as a group member, as a team member. That's one part. The next part is to be able to communicate effectively and give your team or group the assignment and the expectation, reasonable expectation of what is required of them. Then you actually have an understanding, is this requirement and expectation something that I have to actually teach, that I have to create a bit of room for them to actually learn, or is this something that they can actually naturally do? So you have a reasonable expectation of what you're requiring them to do as well.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to group engagement, we want to understand that there are different personalities.
Mm-hmm.
organization. So you not only have your mind and emotions, now
Mm-hmm.
you have 30, 50, 100, 1,000 other complicated personality dynamics, gifts, motivations.
Mm-hmm.
So we take an evaluation: what groups are working well, what groups are not working well, and how do we actually work with them? How
Mm-hmm.
do we actually create a safe space to speak about problems and conflict, because we will have them,
Absolutely.
and to actually create a normacy in inviting how to actually conflict resolve
Mm-hmm.
without attacking one another or withdrawing or keeping it to themselves.
So good. So if I go back to the components of emotional intelligence, which generally are self-awareness. So in a team dynamic, it's not just my awareness, but other awareness,
Mm-hmm.
self-regulation, and also other regulation,
Mm-hmm.
motivation, navigating how I feel about going to work today and working with these people today, and vice versa. On the
Mm-hmm.
other side, though, being able to judge what people's energy is, what they're bringing to the table, um, if they're coming with a mindset to fight today
Mm-hmm.
versus cooperate, empathy and being understanding first of yourself
Mm-hmm.
based on what we've talked about so far, empathy towards yourself, care towards yourself, and then towards others and what they're going through as part of your team. And then social skills, knowing how to talk, like you said, communicate, resolve conflict, and those kind of things. First for myself, again, self leadership, and then other leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if we take those components, what I'm hearing you say, because you said locating where they are, first where you are, where
Mm-hmm.
your position, and then where they are, and then being able to identify, is there a need for training and equipping?
Mm-hmm.
So, am I hearing you say that this is something that we're not necessarily born with or
Mm-hmm.
have to be born with? That this is something that we can learn and grow in as leaders?
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the positives about understanding emotional intelligence, is that everyone can learn if they're willing.
Mm-hmm.
But usually it takes a model, just as we encode what's normal and abnormal, what is acceptable and not acceptable from
Mm-hmm.
our parents or caregivers.
Yeah.
And so we can learn, we can teach those who are willing to actually learn.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I wanted to gently add as well in regards to group dynamics,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm more relationship oriented,
Mm-hmm.
you want to be mindful based on the type of organization, company, or group you have, to be mindful of creating competition and
Mm-hmm.
just hierarchy dynamics, because it
Mm-hmm.
can happen consciously and unconsciously.
Yeah.
The more you have an even balance, that a lot of fairness,
Mm-hmm.
the more collaborative safety that you would actually feel within the environment that you're trying to create.
That is so good. Now, in high tension and high stakes situations, because part of that question was also how do I lean into the emotional intelligence, but still also create room for accountability and excellence? Now, particularly in high stakes situations where emotions are high, critical nature of the situation is high, the risk is so high. How do we navigate those spaces where we don't have, per se, or we feel like we don't have that moment to pause?
Mm-hmm.
How do we navigate those kind of situations without saying, oh, I'm making it, everybody's tense and everybody is in their feelings, so I've got to make room for everybody, but still maintain that level of accountability and excellence in those situations without, like you said, that hierarchical kind of mindset? How do we navigate those kind of situations in an emotionally intelligent way, and I want to also add in a way that honors God.
Yeah. So that's a very layered question.
Yep.
So if I can separate the parts out, a very high intense environment, how I'm going to go a different way. One is to understand we all have the capacity to have self accountability and to understand the difference between observing that this is the culture of the environment and I don't have to actually collude or conform to the emotional tone of the collective. So, and that in itself sets you apart because that brings us to the biblical understanding that we're not to actually conform and to actually be set apart from the world. So it really also ties to internal boundaries as well. Just because this is a high stake environment does not mean that I have to move as aggressively and as quickly as my counterparts, because usually the wise one in the room is the one that actually moves the slowest.
Say that one more time.
Yes, usually the wisest person in the room is actually the one that moves the slowest.
So you're saying don't become the other elephant that's fighting the other elephant. You don't have to be part of the elephant stampede. You
Yes,
can choose to say, I will not participate in this.
yes. And you can observe without being consumed.
Now, is this something I can learn? Because some people might say, I'm naturally hot tempered. Like, I just jump in and I do all the stuff and I react and I don't. Is this something I can learn if I find myself being reactive and automatically you said I don't have to collude with what's going on? I can choose to be separate. I can choose to be different.
Mhm,
If that has not been my norm and my pattern where I immediately feel like being empathetic requires me to join in,
mhm.
how can I practically, tangibly shift how I've been moving thus far?
Sure. So the work starts internally in your private time. I
Mm.
would not suggest going into a very high conflict or high stake environment and begin practicing there, especially when it's been a long term pattern.
Mm.
And that is the first start, is to really just honor that part of yourself and be brutally honest that, I'm really not that patient and I make decisions very quickly. I'm not really patient with too much of anyone, not even myself. I
Mm-hmm.
don't have the time to sit and think or hear a person's perspective. I need to answer quickly. So
Yeah.
we're going to honor that part and not judge first. That's the first, admit. And then the second is what has been the result of me reacting this way over the course of my life, and this impacting me
Mm-hmm.
first, not my position,
Yeah.
because you're going to take your same internal emotional life wherever you go.
Ooh.
So you're going to take a self-analysis, do this in private, and then as you get better and better being patient with your own children, as you get patient in traffic, as you get patient with the clerk, as you get patient with your spouse, then you can actually go another step. You're patient with
Mm-hmm.
your colleague. You're giving yourself assignment. You're giving yourself that assignment at the top of your day. This coworker always snaps at me. My boss snaps at me. So I'm going to challenge myself the next time that happens. This is what I'm going to do, and allow yourself practice doing it over and over again. but
Mm-hmm.
don't go expecting yourself to actually be healed overnight.
Mm-hmm.
I would also add to that, and this is why it's important to understand where you're placed as an employee or a leader. It's going to look different working at a hospital rather than in Congress.
Mm.
It's going to be different working at a factory rather than working in law enforcement.
Mm.
So, this is why the evaluation has to actually happen internally and privately first.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't have to have the space to actually slow down and make a very reasonable, logical, long term decision. We have to make decisions on the spot. So, if you're constantly in a position of agitation and anxiety, you're going to probably possibly make more careless mistakes
Mm-hmm.
instead of you using your private time to actually increase your emotional space so you can actually engage in high conflict and emergency situation as an EMT,
Mm.
as a person that needs to make a quick decision in order to save a life. So it's really going back to what are you doing in your personal time? Because if you're giving out 17-hour days at work, then that's going to actually do the opposite as well. You don't have the patience to
Mm-hmm.
actually sit down and do homework with your child.
Mm-hmm.
So it really just come back to the body. Everyone has time. Sometimes we just have an unhealthy relationship with it.
Oh, okay. Wow. So what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is if I want to respond to situations differently, if I want to demonstrate emotional intelligence, I'm going to have to, and if I'm dissatisfied with how I've been showing up thus far, I have to intentionally carve out the time in the room in my personal life to reset my defaults. I
Mhm.
have to shift what's going on internally because out of the overflow of the heart, I will speak, I will respond. So I have to do the work
Mhm.
behind the scenes in my private space to cultivate, use the word to make space, to make room for intention, for emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
to cultivate that, to develop a new way of operating, a new place from which I'm operating.
Mhm.
Because if I don't attend to that, I can't just fake it and make it.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
can't put on emotional intelligence when I'm in public because in those high stakes moments, what's really going on with me is going to come out.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And especially in high demanding positions that needs your attention and focus,
Mhm.
you have to have a good understanding of how is my work life influencing me and how is my emotional life responding to that environment.
Mhm. Absolutely. This was such a good, I know this is like literally just tip of the iceberg, but there's so much goodness that you shared. Um in even just in terms of practical takeaways, what I hear you say is make the room.
Mhm.
Take time to cultivate these practices in your personal life, in your personal walk with God, especially. Um, how do I measure? How do I know that I'm actually making progress and growing in my emotional intelligence?
Yeah. Well, it's really checking in with yourself every now and then
Mm-hmm.
and doing an inventory. First, you're going to find out where you are first and what areas you want to improve.
Mm-hmm.
Then you want to actually apply what am I being intentional about in regards to what I would like to change.
Mm-hmm.
The next part to that is having someone to keep you accountable outside of yourself. Because we all have blind spots and bright spots, and you will never see yourself 360
Mm-hmm.
inside and out, no matter how insightful you are. We just will never.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really about having someone to hold you accountable, asking questions in regards to the safe relationship. How are you receiving or perceiving me?
Yeah.
And do you see any changes or improvement? It's
Mm-hmm.
really inviting someone else in. But also, you'll begin to actually notice across time that, that really didn't trigger me the way
Mm-hmm.
that it has. I'm
Yeah.
having more healthier habits to unhealthy reactions to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really about the more and more you get a good understanding of what you would like to change and keeping an eye out for those situations and seeing if there's any improvement.
That's awesome. I love that. And I love how step by step your process is as you described it. Now, before we wrap this up today, because again, we could go for a couple of hours talking about this,
Mhm.
um, just share a little bit, some resources